Well, welcome to today's rant. We have some very interesting things to talk about today, which is why I'm doing the rant. I had to quit doing them every day. I've just got so much going on, but I'm going to do them whenever I feel like I have something unique and interesting to share with you. But this yesterday, all the teams for the NCAA tournament were chosen, and there is one sports program that I think has a whole lot more to do and is far more interesting than just sports. You may not be a sports fan, may not be a basketball fan, but this is a very interesting story. And I'm talking about the team from the University of Virginia, one of the most uniquely built teams maybe in college basketball ever, at least for decades. Amazing team, and now they're ranked and have been for weeks and weeks the #1 team in the country, and they're built like no other team out there. And what is it about them? One thing, they have no superstars. Their coach, who is a strong Christian, strong believer, I believe most, if not everybody on the team is, but he went out seeking those who would be good team members and could work together well as a team rather than going after the superstars. Didn't want the superstars. Now that's really interesting, and now they're the best out there. They're the team to beat. We'll see how far they go in the NCAA tournament, but some of the sportscasters and all are saying if Virginia wins it all, this could well radically change sports. It could change basketball. It could have a major impact on college basketball. Others are going to look at it in the same way. You may have seen the movie Moneyball, a true story about the general manager of the Oakland Athletics who lost all of his star players. He raised up through their farm system several superstars who, as soon as they got to that level, they became free agents and left his team, and his team had done all the preparing and raising them up and got one good season out of them, but then they were gone, to the highest bidder. And they determined, we don't have the money to compete like other teams. We got to do this differently. And they kind of went after something really unique that became one of the most successful baseball teams of the times, with one of the lowest salaries, and it was lower than anybody by a huge margin, lower than any other team, and yet they almost won it all. So I'm just saying, this is interesting. Team building is crucial for any level of leadership. And we've got to determine how are we going to build our teams? Are the teams going to be better when you don't have the prima donnas, you don't have the superstars? Not all superstars are prima donnas, of course, but when you've got those who are just going to give it their all, give it their heart, they're going to be good team members, understand it's not all about them, and watch the University of Virginia in the NCAA tournament. It could change basketball, could change a lot of things, should change a lot of things, in my opinion. Now, also, I've seen this before, but, there's just constant evaluations of President Trump and his leadership. I think most of those who are making these evaluations are not leaders, really don't understand leadership at all. A lot of their supposed insights are bizarre to anyone that really understands leadership. But one who I think really hit the nail on the head said, Trump is neither a conservative nor a liberal. He's a pragmatist. He looks at issues okay, what's the problem here? Then he looks at possible solutions. Then he looks at the best solution, and then knows how to formulate a plan to accomplish that solution. And that's how he's addressed almost everything. That's true. In some areas, if Donald Trump was not Donald Trump or had not run on the Republican tickets, I mean, he's been a populist. He's winning over the unions. He's winning over the immigrants. He's winning over, incredible thing. I mean, he has doubled his support among the African American community since taking office. He's done more for them than anybody has done, than the Democrats have done for them in over 40 or 50 years of saying this is their main thing. They haven't done much. And so people just looking at what he does, not his personality and everything else people tend to have problems with, but looking at what he does, there are a lot of people could say he's really a liberal. He's not a liberal. He's just trying to fix problems. Others would look at things and say he is really a conservative. He's conservative in some things and he's liberal in some things, but mostly he is a pragmatist. Now, one of my favorite books of all time, and I love books. You can't be a writer without being a reader. And I learned very early, I'm going to read the classics, read the great ones of history, and what sets them apart. And there is a huge difference in the classics and just about everybody else who may be successful. You can tell there's a depth of insight, there's a depth of their content, their conclusions and all that is uncommon. They deserve to be classics. And but my favorite is Tolstoy. My favorite book that he wrote is War and Peace. And a lot of people have never attempted it just because it's so big, but you should. I think if you got into it, you wouldn't want it to end. You'd be so glad it is so long. I'm just saying. But he's got two main characters in there that to me are the most descriptive of many of the conflicts we're dealing with in America today. And these two characters represent, I think, the liberals and the conservative. In Tolstoy's mind, they weren't defined as that back when he was writing. Kind of they were, but it wasn't his intent to be political on, I think, other than to share what works, a pragmatism. Now, in these two characters, one very liberal, one very conservative, were very close friends. And I think anyone with wisdom, anyone who's going to be a transcendent leader, is going to have close friends that they do not agree with on a lot of things. Just because it not only helps sharpen you, but you're always learning. You're not going to learn much from those who already believe everything you believe. You're going to learn from those who have different perspectives, if you can learn. And I think the great gift of being able to learn is rare today, or even care about going deeper or caring about understanding. But understanding requires standing under someone else's position. So these two of the central characters in War and Peace, one of them is Count Pierre. You've heard me share this before, possibly. Count Pierre. He just had such compassion for the serfs, who were their indentured servants, kind of. And on his plantations, and they were plantations, they were states back then. The word county comes from the nobility, the level of nobility called a count. And basically, counts owned about as much land as we have in our counties today, believe it or not. They were the big landowners, the wealthy. They were the aristocracy, and Pierre was one. He had so much passion to improve the lot of the serfs. Only thing is, his serfs were worse off than anybody else's because he was such a bad manager. He had a bleeding heart and he was sincere. He really wanted to help them. He just was such a bad manager. Now, his good friend, Prince Andre, in the story, didn't have a bleeding heart, but he was an excellent manager. And he cared about people. It just wasn't, he didn't have the bleeding heart thing going, but he cared. But he knew that to be really successful, or to be more successful, he needed to take care of his people. But mostly he was a good manager. He was a pragmatist. What is the problem? Let's formulate solutions for the problems, for the problem we have, choose the best solution, know how to formulate a plan to accomplish that solution, and be decisive and bold enough to execute the plan. Andre had all that going for him. He's a great leader, a great manager. So Prince Andre's serfs were way better off than Pierre's. Way better off than just about anybody else, simply because he was a good manager. And that's what that's what we see happening with Trump. I was on an ad hoc committee to address one of the major problems of our time for Trump. And I was astonished and amazed and so encouraged by the whole way this committee, it was ad hoc, it was just kind of see what you guys can come up with. I was so amazed at the brilliance with which the problems were identified. They were evaluated, solutions were formulated, then all the solutions were cross-checked to believe that fixing one aspect of the problem in this way wouldn't upset and mess up things in another way. And the whole thing was so dealt with, so addressed and evaluated and completed in such brilliant form. The guy leading the committee knew nothing about the specific problem, but he knew how to identify problems. He knew how to formulate solutions, and he knew how to come up with a plan. And the ultimate plan was so good. This was, it was finished long before Trump was elected. But it was so good that some in the Congress at that time wanted to submit it as a bill right then. They said they didn't think anybody in either party could vote against this. It was so brilliant. Taken. Not by this committee, led by a person who didn't know anything about the problem. But he just knew how to address problems, find problems, address them, evaluate them, and come up with solutions. So I think that's a lot of what's going on right now. That's why Trump chose either business leaders or military leaders as some of his top people in his cabinet. They know they have this gift, they have this talent, or they would not have made it to such high positions in either the military or business. So I'm just saying, I'm thankful that we have a pragmatist who looks at most things not from a idealistic or not from a political point of view, but from, hey, we got to fix this. And we still have problems that have not even been addressed by this president. I think some of them are some of the biggest. I think they will be. I am shocked by how much has been accomplished so far and how well it's been done. There is a whole lot more to do. One of the giant ones, like a Damocles sword hanging over us, is our debt, our national debt, and deficits, and how those are addressed before they come crashing down on us. There are other things, but it is just so encouraging to me to see real leadership in that position. I think the entire Obama administration only had 8 people in the executive branch who had ever worked in business or military or anything. They were politicians, and they addressed every problem politically. I don't think our government was formed to work well under political leaders, but under leaders. And there can be a big difference. There can be a huge difference between a politician and a real leader. And I don't think we were supposed to have politicians in our government. We were supposed to have servant leaders who went to Congress, more like jury duty, taking jury duty as a duty, not something to become a profession. I don't think we were meant to have professional politicians in our government. I'm just saying. But I am so encouraged by the way so many things are being addressed and being rectified already. Some of our serious problems in the inner cities and all, they're being addressed. There's a lot more that needs to be done. To me, one of the barometers is seeing Detroit restored as one of the greatest cities on the planet that it once was and should be again. And other cities in our country that are restored in the inner city and the infrastructure and all that, and it should be and it can be done, and I think it will be done. So that's my story for today, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you for joining me for today's rant.